All right, so move on next. We're going to pivot over here to the world of MMA inside the UFC world, and I'll be sharing my UFC 323 main event prediction between Merab and Petr Yan. So in the main event of UFC 323, the final UFC pay-per-view of the calendar year 2025, you will see Merab defend his bantamweight championship against Petr Yan in the main event of UFC 323. So these are the following storylines heading into this bantamweight championship fight. Can Merab finish off the year 4-0? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I just said can Merab finish off the year 4-0. This man, Merab, hands down is the undisputed fighter of the year, male or female fighter in the UFC this year. I don't give a damn what you guys got to say about Ilia Topuria. I don't give a damn what you guys have to say about Islam Makhachev. No, it has been all about Merab in the calendar year 2025. This man is on pace to be 4-0, the first ever fighter in UFC history to be 4-0 in championship fights in the calendar year 2025, if he pulls this out against Petr Yan in the rematch. No fighter has ever went 4-0 in 4 championship fights in the same calendar year in UFC history. We're already talking about Merab, who has already cleared out the division, the bantamweight division. I've already said I think he's the best bantamweight fighter that the UFC has ever seen in the company's history. And I think he's already in line to become a UFC Hall of Famer one day based off of everything that he's accomplished already in his UFC career. You do this, something that's unprecedented. Mind you guys, this man was just in the octagon a month ago, in the month of October, defending the title against Corey Sandhagen. Now he's going to close out the year defending the title. This is some Hall of Fame legit shit out of Merab. Like, you cannot, this is something you do in the UFC 5-4 video games that I could play, fire it up on Xbox, PlayStation. Like, this is some unprecedented shit that I have to give Merab his flowers for. But win or lose, I think he's UFC Fighter of the Year. But we're going to see if he can make history, becoming the first ever fighter to be 4-0 in championship fights in one calendar year. We're going to see if he can do that against Petr Yan in the rematch. The final storyline is, can Petr Yan avenge his loss against Merab? Now, if you guys remember, these two fighters fought each other back in 2023. I think at the time, Petr Yan was the second-ranked bantamweight fighter, and Merab was the third-ranked fighter at the bantamweight division, or vice versa. But either way, I know they were both top 5 in the bantamweight rankings when they fought each other 2 years ago, and it was Merab who won the fight by decision. So can Petr Yan avenge his loss against Merab with the fight having even more at stake this time? Not only is he trying to avenge his loss, but become bantamweight champion again. And he could do that if he can find a way to crack the code and defeat Merab in the main event of UFC 323 to close out the calendar year 2025. But enough with the storylines. Let's get to the tail of the tape here. Starting with the challenger, Petr Yan. Petr Yan is 19-5 in his MMA career. 7 victories come away of knockout. 1 submission victory in his MMA career. Currently the 3rd-ranked bantamweight contender in the UFC today. Stands at 5'6" with a reach of 68 inches. Then I'm looking at the champion here, Merab. Merab is 21-4, 21 victories, 4 losses to his MMA career. 3 victories come away of knockout, 2 submission victories. Currently the reigning defending bantamweight champion, top 3 pound-for-pound fighter in the UFC today. Stands at 5'6" with a reach of 68 inches. So the height goes in favor of the champion Merab, but they both have the same reach. So we'll see if that plays a factor, the height and the reach, in this highly anticipated rematch. Now, these are the following storylines that I have for these fighters to follow if they want to walk out of UFC 323 with that coveted bantamweight championship. Starting off with the challenger, Petr Yan. I think Petr Yan is going to have to win a counterpunching battle. Now, Petr Yan is a pretty good MMA fighter in my opinion. He's just got a tall task in front of him. And I think if you're going to defeat Merab, you got to win the counterpunching battle. Now, Petr Yan does have that boxing background to him, and his fists pack a punch. That's a hard hitter for 135 in the UFC. So I've seen Merab hurt with some strikes in the past, and definitely some heavy strikes that Corey Sandhagen was displaying to him when those two fighters fought each other back in October. So I'm not saying that Merab is bulletproof or he's unbeatable. This version of him is going to be hard to beat, but it starts with winning the counterpunching battle against Merab, making him respect your power and making him go to extraordinary risks take extraordinary risks to possibly defeat you in that octagon. So I think he should do that. If you're Petr Yan, try to win the counter-punching battle against Merab in this fight. Next, I think Petr Yan should use his MMA IQ. He's smart, intelligent, former world champion at this division, but he has to be alert defensively. So he's got to use his MMA IQ, and he has to be prepared for Merab's offense. And I'm going to get into that when I talk about Merab, but Merab's offense is hard to game plan for. So I think Petr Yan's going to have to try to win the counter-punching battle, like I just said a few moments ago, and he's going to have to take him down. I know that's a hard task, but he's going to have to try to fight fire with fire, because Petr Yan is actually a really good grappler and a really good wrestler in his own right as well. And if he doesn't use his MMA IQ and he's not alert defensively and he's not fighting his own fight, I even look back at that first fight earlier today. Merab might have shot for 25 for 30 takedowns in that first fight. So he has to be alert defensively and fight fire with fire in this fight. And last but not least, Petr Yan has to fight in different lateral movements. If he can fight in different lateral movements, he's got a shot. He has to be aware, because if he fighting off the back foot, if he fights in retreat mode, just waiting for the takedown attempts to come, you got no chance in hell. So I think he can't fight off the back foot the whole entire fight if this fight does go to 5 rounds or however long the fight lasts for. He cannot fight off the back foot for 5. Be prepared to fight off the back foot for a total of 5 championship rounds. Must fight moving around in different lateral movements. And if he could do that, he could mix in the hooks and the cross combinations to throw Merab off of his rhythm offensively. So those are the game plans for Petr Yan if he wants to defeat Merab and to become the new bantamweight champion to close out the calendar year 2025. Now, for Merab, game plans for Merab, blitz. Now, I know when you think about blitzing, sometimes if you're not familiar with combat sports, you think about football, you think about basketball. But blitzing in MMA, that's a real relentless deal. And Merab, when he blitzes his opponents, he does not stop. He has that relentless offense, has the best cardio gas tank in all divisions, men or women, in the UFC today. I mean, this man is the real deal. He does not get tired, not get winded. This man will fight the same type of way he started round 1 until the final bell, the final whistle blows. I mean, he has relentless striking, relentless wrestling. The pace from round 1 to round 5 is unbelievable. Like, I'm someone that loves the gym. I would love to be in training camp with Rob just to see how much this man pushes himself to the limit in a cardiovascular mindset and a mind frame. So I think he has to take Petr Yan to the deep waters of drowning with the relentless offense and continue to blitz nonstop. Next, I think Merab should land the calf kicks here. Now, if Merab can land the calf kicks, Petr Yan could be in a world of trouble. Because like I just said a few moments ago, I watched the first fight back again earlier today, and he found some success landing the calf kicks on Petr Yan. I think it happened early in the fight. I want to say second round. If I'm wrong about that, I apologize. I want to say it was the second round where he was landing the calf kicks on Petr Yan, making him under duress, making him very uncomfortable, slowed him down actually, and he wasn't moving around swiftly, fighting different lateral movements for the rest of the 5-round fight. So I think Merab should do that against Petr Yan. And last but not least, land the takedowns and gain ground control. I mean, at the end of the day, we all know it's coming, and Petr Yan and his team know it's coming. That is Merab's bread and butter, guys. I mean, he has landed a total of 117 UFC takedowns. That's a record, by the way. And against Corey Sandhagen, he landed a total of 20 takedowns and 1 fight against Corey Sandhagen. That's another UFC record. So that's his bread and butter. I think he should take Petr Yan to the ground, land the takedowns, tire him out on the ground, gain ground control, try to wear him out, shooting for some submission holds, try to get the submission victory, significant strikes in the mount, on top mount, on side control in the mount. Like, this is going to be some really good MMA that we're going to see out of these two respective fighters when they fight for the bantamweight championship. But there will only be one winner. But with that being said, I'm going to go with Merab to defeat... Let's try that again. I'm going to go with Merab to defeat Petr Yan by decision to successfully retain his bantamweight championship in the main event of UFC 324. Now, honestly, guys, let's be honest here. If Merab goes 4-0, the first man to ever be 4-0, 1 calendar year in championship fight, stamp this man to the UFC Hall of Fame. I think he's the greatest bantamweight fighter already. But if he could do that, just punch his ticket to the UFC Hall of Fame. But let's get back on track. I honestly believe this rematch was made because Merab has already cleared out the entire bantamweight division. There's really nothing else for him to do. Giving Petr Yan a rematch, a guy that you just fought 2 years ago when you defeated him on my scorecard, looking back at the fight, 50-45. That's crazy. You just want to beat his ass even worse this time in a championship environment. But I think Merab is going to be fighting to send a message to the rest of the UFC that he could possibly be pound for pound #1 in the sport. I think this fight could be a little bit more competitive from 2023, but Merab is going to be too much. He's going to be blitzing, the relentless offense that I just talked about, the relentless striking, the relentless wrestling. He's going to land the takedowns. Like I just said a few moments ago, this man just broke a UFC record, landing 20 takedowns against Corey Sandhagen. We all know it's coming. Petr Yan and his team knows it's coming. He's going to land the takedowns. I think Merab is going to win the counter-punching battle when the fight is kept standing. I think he's going to frustrate Petr Yan, landing several takedowns. And when he lands several takedowns, he's going to gain ground control. He's going to try to tire out Petr Yan, shooting for submissions, try to earn a submission victory possibly. If he's on top, on the mound, he's going to land up significant strikes, make Petr Yan very uncomfortable. I think Petr Yan's in a world of trouble here, guys. It could be competitive for the first round or so, but in the end, we all know that Merab is going to smell blood in the water. He's going to feast off of Petr Yan and make this look like a cakewalk, similar to what he did in the first fight. But that is my UFC 323 main event pay-per-view prediction between Merab and Petr Yan.